Not long ago, a preacher had closed out a revival and boarded the train on his journey home. He sat down beside a young man. He tried to start a conversation with him, making some comment about the weather. The young man didn't answer him, so they rode on in silence. In a little while, the preacher heard the young man crying. So he leaned over, put his arms around his shoulders, said, "Son, I'm a minister. I'd like to help you in some way if I can." The young man said, "Yes, preacher. I've got to talk to someone. You see, about 2 years ago, I'd grown so wicked and went so far as to strike my dad with my fist. My dad told me, 'Son, you've grown so wicked that you're worrying your mother to death. You're going to have to leave home.' So you see, preacher, for the past 2 years, I guess I've done just a little bit of everything could be thought of that's wrong. But about a week ago, I knelt down at an old-fashioned altar, and the Lord gloriously saved my soul. You know, first thing I thought of was my dear old mother and dad. Oh, how I'd love to go back home. So I sat down and I wrote my dad a letter. And I said, "Dad, if you could find it in your heart to forgive me, please let me come back home." I told him that I would be on this train, and if he wanted me to get off, then I would. Well, this kind of confused the preacher, and he said, "Son, just how are you going to know that your dad has forgiven you?" The young man replied, "Preacher, for just about all my life, we've lived by these old railroad tracks in a little broken down house, and out in the backyard stands an old apple tree. And I told my dad if he could find it in his heart to forgive me, just to have a white flag in that old tree, and I'd get off." In a little while, the preacher heard this young man break out crying again. The young man said, "Preacher, I'm almost home. I can't bear to look. I'm almost home, preacher. I can't bear to look." The preacher said, "Son, that'll be all right. I'll look for you. I'll be your eyes." So the preacher sat up on the edge of the seat, leaned over, and wiped away the frost from the window so he could see. And as he looked out, a great big old smile came over his face. And he looked back at that young man and he said, "Son, You don't have a thing in this world to worry about. Why, it looks like that old apple tree is in full bloom. My son, there's white flags hanging all over it, and that's not all. Down under it stands a dear old mother and dad, and they're not only waving white flags, they've got a great big old white bed sheet waving, saying, "Come on home, son. We still love you. Come on home." And you know, I'm so glad that we have a Father yonder in heaven, that no matter how wicked you've been and no matter how much wrong you've done, when you're ready to mend that relationship, He's there waiting with open arms saying, "Come on home, my child, I still love you. Come on home." You know, maybe He's speaking to you now, saying, "Come on home, child. Come on home."